Hello, I'm PhocusWire Editor-in-Chief Mitra Sorrells, and today I am joined by Ben Custance. He is Director of Travel Management at Navan. Welcome, Ben.
Uh, Thanks for having me, Mitra. Looking forward to going into more detail in the travel industry today.
Yeah, wonderful. I know Navan provides business travel and expense management solutions for thousands of companies around the world. So I'd imagine in your role, you are really keenly tuned in to what is happening in the travel industry. Can you start by just telling us a bit about how you foresee travel unfolding over the coming years?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. It's something that comes up with a lot of prospective customers that we're talking to, like what do we see the state of the industry happening? I think a couple of the key points that we're seeing, particularly around how the industry is becoming more fragmented, right? So what we're seeing is that very often business travelers, they're used to actually going to multiple different sources to book their leisure trips, to book their holidays. They're going to aggregators, they're going to website direct, they're going to online search engines, and they're seeing really competitive pricing, and they're very price conscious. And they're actually starting to mimic that when they're booking their business travel, right? They are very often budget owners, right? So they're very responsible corporate citizens. And there's perhaps some frustrations when they're not seeing the same content that they might get with an airline direct. We were actually over at the ITM conference in Brighton this year, and they did a poll, I think, of around 100 travel managers. And over 80% of them had frustrations with their current setup, citing in particular lack of access to full airline content, for example. And I think that content distribution has significantly fragmented, particularly in the last couple of years. And what we'll see is like TMCs have to be less focused on single content sources. So they have to diversify those different content sources in order to
Right.
ensure users have access to that most competitive pricing. I think, one a key area here really is NDC, right? So currently at Navan, we have 12 NDC connections available. According to our analysis of those 12 NDC connections, the NDCs represent a potential savings of around 12%. So I think the headline really here is that the TMCs can't rely on a single source for content, and have to look at multiple channels to aggregate content into the OBT, into their platform, to ensure that there isn't that discrepancy across that leisure experience, booking direct with multiple carriers, and the business travel experience as well.
Okay, so let's talk about this a bit more. First, specifically related to technology. How do you foresee the role of technology kind of evolving to streamline and integrate various aspects of travel services in the future?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a number of strategies that buyers and suppliers can put in place. I think some of these have actually been a constant of the travel industry for a long time right now. But it's whether a modern booking platform can actually enhance this, right? So whether it's
Right.
leveraging data analytics to identify travel patterns, maybe there is a certain carrier on a particular route that offers a more preferential rate. Or maybe there are opportunities based upon volumes to negotiate a specific deal with the supplier. Or maybe it's something like dynamic policy to ensure that travelers are getting a realistic price to pay for business suitable options. I think what we've traditionally seen in that space is a fixed cap, right? A fixed cap all year round that doesn't take into account variances like seasonality, availability that can actually increase or decrease the cost of travel. But the key part really here is travelers and bookers need to have a tool that's making, booking and also managing travel as simple as possible while actually being compliant to their company's travel policy.
Yeah.
This simple, like unified, I guess, unified user experience, combined with, some of the content pieces that we've talked about previously, ensures like a high adoption to the managed travel program. From a supplier side, they need to have obviously like a really user-friendly platform, but I think
Yeah.
that really needs to be optimized for mobile, right? So I think what we're seeing is like a real shift between booking patterns, right? So users aren't just simply sitting in front of a laptop all day or a computer, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. They might want to log on in the evening on their mobile or on the train home from work, and they need to have a unified experience. So it's important that TMCs, whenever they're building a tool, take into consideration a web experience and a mobile experience at the same time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I'm someone that does almost everything on my phone. And so it can be very
Yeah.
frustrating if that's not a good experience. So that makes a lot of sense. You've been touching on what's happening with distribution, of course, a very, very hot topic. The world and across the industry. Do you see distribution becoming even more fragmented? And how can you just expand a bit more on how this can impact the travel experience for consumers and providers alike?
Yeah, this is a very interesting one, and I think it's a difficult balancing act, right? TMCs have to build lots of different separate connections in order to be able to aggregate to an NDC, or whether it's an aggregator, or whether it's the GDS, and whether they're going to have the resources to continue diversifying all those different content sources. I think the other critical piece is not just access to that content, it's the ability to manage that content, which is really critical, right? So if a TMC is aggregating content from multiple sources, and you have agents who are very used to servicing and managing bookings directly in the GDS, how do they support agents to manage that content from different sources as well? So technology needs to be on the booking, the trip management, the reporting side, but I think technology also needs to be available to agents in order to be able to properly support business travelers across all those content sources. So it's one thing to have the content in the platform, it's another thing to be able to change, cancel those bookings, like we know happens with business travel, which doesn't necessarily happen with leisure travel.
Okay. And as we are getting ready to wrap up, I would ask, as I'm thinking about it, I've covered Navan quite a bit, and I've watched the progression of the company over the years. Certainly, it's been one of the kind of disruptors in the space. So I'm curious, what innovative approaches or technologies would you say are emerging today to address some of the challenges that are being posed by this fragmented distribution landscape?
Yeah, I think what we're seeing is AI is really expanding, really growing very quickly across all global businesses, and business travel is no different, right? So I think AI is definitely here to stay, and companies that fail to adapt will eventually fall behind. We've spoken to some travel managers who are even looking to build their own AI powered app to alleviate some of the simple questions that continually routed to the team, right? The simple tasks that they're having to manage directly with their travelers that can be automated directly through AI. So we actually have launched Ava. So it's our AI powered virtual assistant. And actually, so she processes, thousands of chats a day, and over 35% of those are managed to completion, right? So a user can actually log on to Navan, they can interact with Ava, and Ava can actually complete a booking, complete a change directly. And obviously, the more questions you ask AI, the more tasks you get them to process, the more intelligent they get, right? So I think the end goal from an AI perspective is that you can't distinguish the experience with AI versus interacting directly with a travel agent.
Yeah, I mean, AI is certainly something we're going to be talking a lot more about in the years to come, for sure. So, well, Ben Custance from Navan, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mitra.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.